The grand hall of the Willowmere Manor glowed under a cascade of golden fairy lights. The air carried the sweet aroma of roses and aged wine, while crystal chandeliers threw intricate patterns across the oak-paneled floors. Guests in elegant gowns and crisp tuxedos glided to the rhythm of a live violin ensemble, their laughter mingling with the clink of champagne flutes. It was the kind of wedding that would be whispered about in the elite circles of Seattle for years. Opulent, perfect, a testament to love and status. Yet, in a quiet corner of the room, 13-year-old Clara Hensley felt like a ghost. Seated in her sleek silver wheelchair, Clara toyed with the hem of her sapphire blue dress, a color her mother had always loved. She'd chosen it hoping her mother, Evelyn Hensley, might notice, might smile the way she used to before the car crash that changed everything. But Evelyn, once a renowned art curator, now sat at the main table, her face a mask of polite detachment as she nodded at gallery owners and collectors. Clara's fingers traced the edge of her armrest, matching the tempo of the music. She used to love dancing, back when her mother would twirl her around their sunlit studio, paint smudges on their hands, both of them dissolving into giggles. Now no one met her eyes. The other children clustered together, swapping secrets, while adults skirted around her, their glances sliding away as if her wheelchair were a barrier they couldn't cross. A server passed with a tray of petite lemon tarts, and Clara reached out, her movement careful. He didn't slow down, didn't offer to help. She barely caught one before he vanished into the crowd. Across the room, Ethan Brooks tugged at the collar of his borrowed suit, feeling like an outsider among the polished guests. He was only here because his cousin, the wedding's florist, had dragged him along. His 9-year-old daughter, Mia, had insisted on coming, enchanted by the promise of fairy lights and endless desserts. Now Mia pulled at his hand, her brow furrowed. "Dad, that girl over there looks lonely," she whispered, pointing toward Clara. Ethan followed her gaze to the girl in the wheelchair, her posture slightly slumped as she watched the dancers. He knew that look. Mia had worn it after her mother left, like the world had turned its back. Without a word, Ethan squeezed Mia's shoulder. "Wait here, kiddo." He crossed the room, dodging clusters of guests who barely noticed him. When he reached Clara, he knelt beside her wheelchair, meeting her eyes. Her expression was guarded, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Want to dance?" he asked, his voice gentle but sure. Clara froze, her hazel eyes searching his face for mockery. Then she glanced down, her voice barely audible. "I can't." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Who says?" Before she could respond, he stood and moved behind her chair, grasping the handles. A few guests nearby turned, their murmurs barely audible over the music. Clara tensed, her breath hitching, but Ethan guided her chair toward the dance floor with ease. He stepped in front of her again, extending his hands. "Trust me, okay?" For a moment, Clara didn't move. Then hesitantly she reached out. Ethan's grip was steady as he supported her, helping her balance as they began to sway. It wasn't the wild, joyful spin she remembered with her mother, but something softer, more deliberate. Her feet brushed the floor, her hands gripping his arms for stability. For the first time in a year, Clara felt seen. The crowd around them quieted, curious glances turning into soft smiles. At the main table, Evelyn watched, her chest tightening. Her assistant, Lauren, leaned close, her tone clipped. "Mrs. Hensley, should I intervene?" He might not know how to handle her condition. Evelyn's hands tightened around her napkin, her eyes fixed on her daughter's faint smile. "No," she said softly. "Let her have this." Because for the first time since the crash, Clara didn't look invisible. She looked alive. The music wove through the air, a tender waltz that seemed to cocoon Clara and Ethan in a world apart from the glittering chaos of Willowmere Manor. Clara's fingers gripped Ethan's arms as he guided her wheelchair in a gentle sway, his movements steady and deliberate. She could sense the quiet strength in him, the kind that came from carrying burdens heavier than a child's weight. "I haven't danced in forever," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the violins. Ethan grinned, his eyes warm. "You're a pro, kid." A small laugh escaped Clara, startling her with its lightness. For the first time in months, she forgot the pitying glances, the averted eyes, the way people seemed to see her chair but not her. For this moment, she was just a girl at a wedding, dancing with someone who saw her. Across the hall, Mia watched, her earlier concern replaced by a wide-eyed grin. She'd seen her dad step up like this before, always the one to help when others hesitated. It was why she adored him. But before she could run over, a hand gripped her shoulder. "Mia, stay put," her mother, Vanessa Brooks, said sharply, her manicured nails digging in slightly. Vanessa's beauty was striking but cold, like a perfectly cut diamond. Her lips tightened as she pulled Mia away from the dance floor. Your father's causing a scene, and we're not getting dragged into it. Mia's face fell, but she didn't protest. She knew her mother's tone. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Who's that man? That's Evelyn Hensley's daughter, isn't it? I heard she hasn't walked since the crash. Is he even thinking? She could get hurt. Ethan ignored them, his focus locked on Clara, on the way her eyes sparkled with each gentle turn. He'd spent years as a firefighter, trained to carry others through chaos. This was no different. From the main table, Evelyn Hensley watched, her expression unreadable. Ethan caught her gaze briefly, but didn't waver. If she had an issue, she could speak up herself. As the waltz faded, he slowed, easing Clara back into her chair. Her cheeks glowed, her eyes brighter than they'd been all evening. Thank you, she whispered. Ethan knelt beside her. Anytime, Clara. He paused, then added, You know, your mom could do this with you too. Clara's smile dimmed. She fidgeted with a fold in her dress. She doesn't anymore. Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't know Evelyn Hensley or the full weight of their story, but he knew what it felt like to think you'd lost your place in someone's life. Before he could respond, a sharp voice cut through. Ethan, a moment. Vanessa stood nearby, her posture rigid, her eyes like ice. Ethan sighed. Be right back, he told Clara, giving her a reassuring nod before facing his ex-wife. Vanessa didn't wait. She stepped closer, her voice a low hiss. What are you doing? You don't even know these people. I'm dancing with a kid who needed it, Ethan said evenly. You're embarrassing us. That's Evelyn Hensley's daughter. Do you even know who she is? Vanessa's eyes flashed. Ethan glanced back at Clara, now alone again, her glow fading. I know she's been ignored all night. Vanessa's jaw tightened. This is why you'll never get anywhere, Ethan. You act without thinking. She grabbed Mia's hand. We're leaving. Mia's lip trembled, but she followed. Ethan watched them go, his hands clenching. He hated how Vanessa wielded Mia like a pawn, hated the way she forced him to choose between being a father and doing what felt right. But then he saw Clara, sitting quietly, and he pushed the frustration down. One thing at a time. He started back toward her when a figure in a tailored gray suit blocked his path. Lauren Tate, Evelyn's assistant, offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Brooks? Mrs. Hensley would like a word. Ethan's stomach sank. About what? Lauren's gaze flicked to Clara, then back. About why you thought it was okay to involve her daughter without permission. Ethan followed Lauren through the crowd, feeling the weight of curious stares. Guests whispered behind their drinks, their judgment palpable. Evelyn waited by a tall window, moonlight illuminating the sharp lines of her face. Her wheelchair was positioned with precision, her posture rigid. Lauren murmured, Mrs. Hensley, before stepping back, close enough to intervene, far enough to feign discretion. Ethan didn't wait. If this is about Clara. You touched my daughter without my consent, Evelyn said, her voice low but edged with steel. I asked her first, Ethan replied, meeting her gaze. She's 13. She doesn't know what's best for her. Evelyn's hands gripped her chair, her knuckles pale. You don't know what she's been through. Ethan crossed his arms. I know she deserves to smile. And from where I was standing, no one else was stepping up to make that happen. Evelyn's eyes flickered, a crack in her composure. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of their words hanging in the air. The tension in the air was palpable as Evelyn Hensley let out a shaky breath, her shoulders sagging. She looked past Ethan to where Clara sat alone again, her head bowed, her sapphire dress pooling around her like a quiet sea. You think I don't know she deserves more? Evelyn's voice broke, raw with anguish. You think I haven't tried? The words carried a weight that stopped Ethan cold. This wasn't just frustration, it was heartbreak. Evelyn pressed a hand to her forehead. Last spring, I promised her we'd dance at this wedding. I'd been working with a therapist for months, rebuilding strength. She paused, her voice faltering. Then a week ago, I collapsed during a session. Couldn't even stand without help. Clara had to call for the nurse. Ethan stayed silent, the gravity of her words sinking in. What could he say to that? Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper. How do I lift her when I can't even lift myself? The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken pain. Then, Mom. Clara's voice was soft, tentative. She'd wheeled herself closer, unnoticed, her eyes wide with hope and hesitation. Evelyn stiffened, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her face. Hey, sweet pea. You okay? Clara bit her lip. I was. Her gaze flicked to Ethan, then back to her mother. Mom, can we dance? Like we used to. Evelyn's breath caught. Clara, you know What if we help? Ethan cut in, unable to stop himself. Both Hensleys turned to him, Evelyn's eyes narrowing. What? Ethan held her gaze. You support her upper body. I'll handle the rest. We go slow. Or we don't. It's her call. Clara's face lit up, her eyes darting between them. For a long moment, Evelyn didn't move. Then, with a trembling nod, she whispered, Clara, you want to try? Clara nodded eagerly, her braid bouncing. Evelyn swallowed hard, maneuvering her wheelchair alongside Clara's and locking the brakes. Okay, let's do this. The transfer was clumsy at first, Evelyn gripping Clara's arms, Ethan carefully supporting her legs. They moved with cautious precision, as if defusing a bomb. Then, miraculously, Clara was upright, her weight balanced between them, her feet grazing the floor. The violins shifted into a gentle waltz, as if sensing the moment. Evelyn's arms shook, but she held firm. Ready, love? Ready, Clara said, her smile radiant. They moved together, not gracefully, not perfectly, but with a quiet magic. Clara laughed, a bright, unrestrained sound that echoed through Willowmere Manor's grand hall. Evelyn's breath hitched, and then she laughed too, a soft, disbelieving sound, like she'd rediscovered a lost piece of herself. Guests stopped pretending not to watch, some pulling out phones, others wiping their eyes. Lauren, Evelyn's assistant, stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, her hands clenched. Vanessa, lingering near the exit with Mia, felt a pang of something sharp and unfamiliar, regret perhaps. Ethan stayed quiet, adjusting his grip to keep Clara steady, his own throat tight. Then a small voice broke through. Dad, I want to dance too. Mia darted from Vanessa's side, her pink dress swishing as she ran onto the floor. Ethan grinned, shifting to include her, one hand still supporting Clara while the other lifted Mia. The music swelled into a livelier tune, and the four of them moved together. Clara held between her mother and Ethan, Mia giggling as she clung to her father's shoulder, her shoes scuffing his boots. For the first time since the accident, the hall didn't feel like a shrine to Evelyn's losses. It felt alive. Then the moment shattered. A sharp cry sliced through the music. All eyes turned to the entrance, where Lauren stood, one hand over her mouth, a shattered wine glass at her feet, its contents pooling like ink on the marble. Oh my God, she gasped. Evelyn, your medication. Evelyn's body tensed, her grip on Clara tightening. Ethan felt the shift in her posture. What about it? Evelyn asked, her voice sharp. Lauren hurried forward, her heels clicking. Your evening dose. I just checked your bag. The pills are gone. A murmur spread through the crowd. Evelyn's face paled. Ethan steadied Clara, his voice low. What does that mean? It means, Evelyn said through gritted teeth, without those, by morning I won't be able to move my arms enough to hold a cup. Her eyes snapped to Lauren. When did you last see them? I packed them myself this afternoon, Lauren said, her voice shaking with what seemed like genuine panic. This isn't just a mix-up, Evelyn. Someone took them. Clara's fingers tightened on her mother's sleeve, a small whimper escaping her. Ethan saw the moment Evelyn's fear turned to fierce determination, her eyes blazing with protective instinct. Call security, she ordered Lauren. Now. Evelyn's voice softened, the fire in her eyes dimming as she looked at Clara, who had wheeled closer, her expression a mix of determination and fear. Clara, we need to get you somewhere safe, Evelyn said, her tone urgent but gentle. Ethan didn't hesitate. He lifted Mia onto his hip with one arm, while guiding Clara's wheelchair with the other, weaving through the crowd now humming with nervous whispers. As they approached the ornate staircase of Willowmere Manor, Clara twisted in her chair, her voice small. Mom's in trouble. Ethan followed her gaze. Evelyn sat alone, guests edging away, their faces a mix of concern and unease. Lauren stood beside her, her hand resting on Evelyn's shoulder with an almost proprietary air. Something about it made Ethan's instincts flare, a firefighter's gut telling him the scene wasn't right. Mia, sensing the shift, pressed her face into Ethan's shoulder. I'm scared, Daddy, she mumbled. Ethan kissed her forehead. I know, kiddo. Me too. The admission surprised him. He hadn't let fear touch him since the wildfires, not through the divorce, not through the sleepless nights wondering if he was enough for Mia. But with Clara's hopeful eyes and Mia's small heartbeat against him, the stakes felt higher than ever. Upstairs, in a quiet lounge repurposed as a safe room, Clara wheeled to the window overlooking the manor's gardens. They're searching the parking lot, she said, her voice tight. Like someone just dropped the pills there. Ethan set Mia down with a sketch pad, then joined Clara. Below, security guards swept flashlights across the grounds, their movements almost theatrical. Too convenient, Ethan thought, his training kicking in, years of spotting patterns in chaos. Clara, he said carefully. Who handles your mom's medication? Lauren, Clara replied instantly, then hesitated. She's always super careful about it. A memory flickered, Lauren's hand lingering near Evelyn's water glass earlier, her sharp gaze during their dance. Ethan's blood chilled. He grabbed the hotel phone and dialed the front desk. I need a list of everyone who accessed Hensley's medical files this week. Now. The clerk stammered. Sir, I can't. Life or death, Ethan snapped. The clerk relented, typing furiously. Mia tugged at Ethan's sleeve. Daddy, the lady with the sparkly earrings was crying in the hallway earlier. She was on the phone, saying, "It has to be tonight." Clara's breath caught. Lauren wears those big diamond studs. The puzzle snapped into place. Lauren hadn't just misplaced the pills, she'd orchestrated this. But why? The clerk's voice came through, listing names. Alongside Evelyn's medical records was access to her gallery's financials, tied to a massive acquisition deal that would collapse if Evelyn were deemed unfit to lead. Ethan's hands shook as he hung up. He'd seen this before, power plays masked as loyalty, but now a mother and daughter were the targets. Downstairs, chaos erupted. Through the window, Ethan saw Evelyn slump in her wheelchair, her movements jerky, her hands trembling. Early symptoms. Lauren knelt beside her, her voice loud enough to carry. Please, give her space, she's not well. The perfect story, unstable curator, devoted assistant stepping in. Clara made a small, pained sound. We have to help her. Ethan was already moving, grabbing Mia's hand and pushing Clara toward the service elevator. Change of plans. We're not hiding. We're fighting. If Lauren wanted to play dirty, she'd chosen the wrong man to cross. The elevator crawled downward, its hum underscoring the tension. Clara gripped her chair's wheels, her knuckles white. Mia clung to Ethan's side, her small hand tight in his. Ethan's mind raced. They needed evidence to expose Lauren before Evelyn's condition worsened. Then Clara's earlier words hit him. She's always super careful about it. Clara, Ethan said, where does Lauren keep your mom's pills at home? In her office safe, Clara said, then froze. But she always carries an emergency dose in her bag. She showed me once when Mom missed a dose. Ethan's pulse surged. A competent assistant wouldn't leave their boss vulnerable. Either the pills were still with Lauren, or the theft was a lie. The elevator doors opened to a nearly empty hall, save for a cluster of guests around Evelyn who slumped further, struggling to hold her head up. Lauren hovered, one hand on Evelyn's shoulder, the other typing rapidly on her phone, likely contacting the gallery board, setting her plan in motion. Ethan leaned down to Clara. Get to your mom. Keep everyone's attention. Clara nodded, her jaw set, and wheeled forward with purpose. Clara wheeled into the crowd, her voice cutting through the murmurs with startling clarity. Mom, I found your spare pills in the coat room. Every head turned. Lauren's polished facade faltered, her eyes widening. That's impossible, she said too quickly. Clara held up an orange prescription bottle, a decoy she'd grabbed from the Manor's Lost and Found. Ethan realized with a surge of admiration. Right where you always keep them, Lauren. Clara's tone was innocent, but her eyes were sharp. Lauren's composure cracked, just for a moment, long enough for Ethan to slip behind her and grab the sleek leather bag slung over her chair. What are you doing? Lauren snapped, lunging for it. Ethan upended the bag. A compact, a phone, a key fob, and 2 orange prescription bottles hit the floor with a clatter. The hall fell silent. Evelyn, struggling to lift her head, fixed her gaze on the bottles. You had them all along? Lauren's mouth opened, then closed. Evelyn, I can explain. No need. Ethan picked up one of the bottles, reading the label aloud. Lorazepam. For muscle spasms. As needed. He pinned Lauren with a stare honed from years of facing down chaos in burning buildings. Funny, these aren't the meds you said were stolen. Mia, clinging to Ethan's side, piped up. She was crying in the hallway, Daddy saying, "It has to be tonight," on the phone. The crowd's murmurs grew into a wave of shock. Evelyn's attorney pushed through, phone already recording. Lauren took a step back, her heels catching on the hem of her dress. You were going to let me collapse, Evelyn said, her voice low, each word a blow. In front of everyone. To prove I can't run my gallery. Lauren's mask shattered. You can't lead it, she spat. You're a shadow of who you were. The board knows it. I know it. Her eyes flicked to Clara. Do you really think she deserves a mother who can't even hold her? Ethan's blood boiled. Before anyone could blink, he stepped forward, gripping Lauren's arm firmly, his voice a low growl. Listen up. You're going to walk away. Resign quietly. And if you ever come near this family again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've done." For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then Lauren tore free and fled, her heels echoing a desperate retreat across the marble floor. The crowd erupted in a mix of gasps and angry chatter. Ethan's focus shifted to Evelyn, who reached shakily for the real pills. Clara was faster, popping the cap with practiced ease. "Here, Mom." Evelyn's trembling hands took the medication, but when she looked at Ethan, her eyes were clear. "I owe you." Ethan shook his head. "You don't." As Mia climbed onto Clara's lap, as Evelyn's strength began to return, he understood. This wasn't about debts. It was about seeing someone's pain and stepping in anyway. The violins, sensing the shift, began a gentle melody full of hope. Evelyn took a deep breath and reached for Clara's hand. "Clara Hensley," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "May I have this dance?" Clara's face lit up, and with Ethan steadying them, mother and daughter moved together, not gracefully but together, as the last rays of sunset bathed Willowmere Manor in gold. This is why we don't walk past someone who's hurting. Sometimes one question, "Why is she alone?" can change everything. If this story touched you, share it. Honor the Ethans in your life. And remember, you might be one moment of courage away from changing a life.